"Why is my mom's photo in your mansion?" said the black girl. The millionaire was shocked. The framed photograph sat on the grand hallway table, surrounded by polished silver and fresh white lilies. Zoey paused mid-step the moment her eyes settled on the familiar face. The gentle smile, the warm eyes, the same eyes she saw every time she looked in the mirror. Her heart pulled tight. "Mom?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. Julian turned slowly. He followed her gaze, but there was no shock in his face. Only confusion. "You mean the woman in the picture?" he asked quietly. But before he could say anything else, Eleanor Hale entered the room with the soft click of expensive heels. Her voice was calm, crisp, and far too controlled. "That woman," she said, "is irrelevant." Zoey's fingers curled. "She is not irrelevant. She is my mother." Eleanor's eyes barely blinked. "Your mother was someone else entirely. Do not let your imagination embarrass you in this house." Julian looked between them, unsettled yet silent, as if a truth was buried somewhere inside him that he had forgotten how to touch. Zoey felt a cold certainty settle inside her. Something here was wrong, deeply wrong, and she was the only one who could uncover it. If you are still here, stay with this story. And if you want more stories like this one, you may support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. The mansion had always felt too quiet, even before Zoey understood why. Silence sat in the halls the same way it sat inside Julian Hale. He moved through life like someone who had everything and yet held nothing close. People saw the wealth, the reputation, the legacy. No one saw the space where love should have been. Julian grew up in this same house under Eleanor Hale's watchful eye. She believed that a family name was a crown, and crowns did not bend. She shaped him with rules instead of warmth, expectations instead of affection. He learned early that emotions were distractions, and questions were disobedience. When he was very young, he remembered someone soft, someone who laughed easily and smelled like oranges and sunlight. Maya. He remembered her hands brushing his hair back while humming something gentle. He remembered leaning into her shoulder when the world felt too sharp. But one morning she was simply gone. No goodbyes, no explanations, just locked rooms, hushed voices, and Eleanor's voice telling him that Maya had abandoned them. That some women were too weak to be mothers. That the family's image needed protection. And Julian, only a child, believed the only adult who stayed. Later he learned that Harrington Cole Firm, the same firm that represented the Hale Empire for decades, had been involved. Documents rewritten. Medical claims manufactured. Signatures forced. A woman painted unstable so that the Hale name stayed untarnished. Eleanor did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She had money, connections, influence heavy enough to bend the truth itself. Julian should have questioned more. He should have remembered more. But Eleanor taught him to forget the parts of himself that felt too human. And forgetting became a habit. By the time Zoey was born, Julian had mastered that cold quiet. He hired the best tutors, the best nannies, the best everything. Yet he kept his daughter at a distance without realizing it. He believed providing was the same as loving. Zoey grew up surrounded by marble floors and chandeliers, but she felt like she was living inside a museum where touching anything mattered too much. She always wondered why her father never spoke about her mother. Every time she asked, he became unreachable, like a door shutting from the inside. "It is complicated," he would say. "Let the past stay where it is." And Zoey learned to stop asking out loud, even though the questions kept growing inside her. Eleanor saw the same quiet fire in Zoey that Maya once had. It irritated her. Zoey smiled too softly, thought too deeply, felt too strongly. Eleanor believed those traits made people weak. She began shaping Zoey the same way she shaped Julian. Rules, posture, silence. Appearances mattered. Reputation mattered. Each breakfast was a lesson in control. Each dinner was a reminder of what should never be discussed. But the picture changed everything. Zoey had spent years looking at her own reflection, memorizing the curve of her smile and the shape of her eyes. The woman in that frame had the same eyes. The same quiet warmth. The same gentleness Eleanor tried so hard to crush. Zoey replayed the moment again and again. Eleanor's sudden stiffness. Julian's confusion tinged with something like pain. The way the whole room seemed to freeze when she said, "My mother." If the truth was innocent, they would not have reacted like that. That night, her room felt heavier than usual. The chandelier lights dimmed slowly, but she stayed sitting upright on her bed, hands clasped, heartbeat steady. She did not cry. She did not panic. She simply remembered that feeling in her chest when she saw the photograph. It was not just recognition. It was memory trying to come home. Zoey understood something clearly. No one here was going to tell her the truth. Not Julian, who had been taught to forget. Not Eleanor, who would rather rewrite reality than admit wrongdoing. So she would find the truth herself, quietly, carefully, and she would not stop until she knew who her mother really was. Zoey waited until the house had gone completely still. Eleanor's bedroom lights turned off at 10 every night, and Julian's office door closed soon after. The mansion always looked impressive during the day, but at night it felt hollow, like something important was missing in its walls. She moved quietly through the hallway, her small footsteps soundless against the polished floor. She remembered every corner, every guard rotation, every door that made the slightest sound. Being raised in this house taught her how to survive in silence. The photo was still in the glass cabinet downstairs. She did not touch it again. She just looked at it. The soft smile, the familiar eyes, the face that felt like home without ever being known. The name at the bottom of the frame was not Maya Lawson. It read Maya Hale. Someone had erased her identity, then rewritten it to fit the mansion's narrative. Zoey whispered the name to herself, letting it settle in her memory like a puzzle piece locking into place. She went to the private study. Julian rarely entered there anymore, but Eleanor kept everything in organized folders, letters, old records, property documents. Zoey searched for anything with Maya's name. At first, nothing. Then, tucked between real estate files, she found a thin envelope. The paper inside was worn, like it had been opened and closed many times. It was a medical discharge paper. Maya Lawson, not Maya Hale. Address, a rundown part of the city Zoey had never been allowed to visit. Her hands trembled. She did not stop. She used her tablet to look up public records. It took 3 hours of quiet persistence, but she found pieces of a life her father never spoke about. Pictures from years ago, a small apartment building, a clinic nearby, a community center. Maya Lawson had not abandoned anyone. She had been pushed away, erased like pencil on paper. Zoey needed someone who understood how the world hides things. Someone who spent their life uncovering truths others tried to bury. Rachel Monroe. Zoey had seen one of her interviews months ago. A journalist who exposed a charity fraud involving politicians. Fearless, sharp, not easily controlled. She found her email and typed slowly, choosing each word carefully. I need your help. My name is Zoey Hale. My mother is alive, but everyone was told she left us. I found documents that do not make sense. I think someone powerful made her disappear. She hesitated only once before pressing send. The reply came the next morning. Rachel wanted to meet. They met in a quiet cafe far from the city center. Zoey sat across from her and looked older than her age, her back straight, her voice steady. Rachel expected a confused child. Instead, she met someone who had been forced to grow up too fast. What do you think happened? Rachel asked gently. I do not think, Zoey said. I know something was done, and I need to prove it. Rachel listened. Really listened. Every detail, every memory, every unanswered question. When Zoey showed her the envelope and the altered name, something in Rachel's expression shifted. This was not just a suspicion. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Rachel agreed to help. They spent the next weeks quietly gathering records. Hospital files, legal documents, financial transfers. Every trail led back to one place, Harrington Cole Firm, the same firm Eleanor Hale trusted with every secret. Rachel explained slowly, choosing her words carefully. This law firm does not just handle legal matters. They manage problems. They bury things. They erase people. Zoey's chest tightened. They dug deeper. There were forged medical reports, claiming Maya was emotionally unstable. Signed witness statements from people who did not exist. A custody document stamped with signatures that did not match. A picture began forming. Maya had been framed to look unfit. So Julian would never question her disappearance. So Eleanor could control everything. So the Hale name stayed untarnished. Zoey felt something break quietly inside her. Not sadness. Not fear. Resolve. Rachel looked at her and said, This was not just about your mother. They built a pattern. They have done this to others too. Zoey realized the truth was much bigger than her and Maya. This was not a family tragedy. It was a system built to protect power. And now that they had touched the edges of it, they had no choice but to go deeper. The real battle was only beginning. The mansion changed. It was subtle at first. A guard who usually smiled no longer made eye contact. The housekeeper who used to chat with Zoey now grew quiet when she entered a room. Doors that were always unlocked began requiring codes. Eleanor had not confronted her yet, but the air carried the weight of eyes watching. Zoey kept her posture calm, but inside she felt every shift. Eleanor Hale was careful. She never raised her voice, never accused directly. She simply adjusted the world around her, tightening invisible ropes. One evening, while the family was seated in the grand dining room, Eleanor placed a second fork beside Zoey's plate. A small gesture, but her eyes held a message. "In this house, people know their place," she said lightly, almost like a joke. But her gaze lingered too long. Zoey did not react. She had learned that real power was quiet. Meanwhile, Rachel worked tirelessly. She stayed up nights scanning files, cross-checking signatures, reviewing old court transcripts. What they uncovered looked less like one mistake and more like a pattern spanning years. Custody cases where poor mothers lost children without proper hearings. Medical records altered to label women as unstable. Property transfers that moved homes away from families with no legal explanation. And every case had one detail in common. The paperwork went through Harrington Cole. Rachel printed documents and laid them across her kitchen table. "This is organized cruelty," she whispered. "Someone built a machine that destroys lives to keep the Hale family clean." Zoey studied every page with quiet, fiery focus. This was no longer just about her mother. This was about every family hurt the same way. One late night, while searching the study again, Zoey found something new. Behind the lower drawer of Eleanor's desk, hidden under a wood panel, were letters. Real letters. Handwritten. They were addressed to Julian from Maya. They were never opened. The handwriting was soft and familiar, words filled with love, fear, longing. Maya had begged for a chance to explain. She had asked why he never came. She had prayed he still remembered her. Zoey sat on the floor, her hands shaking, tears running silently. Maya had never abandoned them. Eleanor had stolen the letters, kept them buried for years. Zoey wiped her face and slid the letters into her jacket. But just as she stood to leave, she heard the doorway shift. Eleanor was watching. She did not shout. She did not look surprised. Her expression was calm, distant, unreadable. "You are old enough to understand something," she said softly. "Love does not build empires. Love weakens them." Zoey did not move. Eleanor stepped closer. "Your mother was an inconvenience, a distraction. She wanted a life your father was not made for. So I removed the problem, and I kept him whole." Her voice was steady, confident. "One day you will understand, and you will thank me." Zoey's voice was barely a whisper. "I will never thank you." A small, cold smile touched Eleanor's lips. "That is what your mother said too. But look where she is now." Zoey did not flinch, but something inside her hardened into steel. Later that night, Rachel called, her voice urgent. "Zoey, I found something else. There are recorded phone logs, meetings between Harrington Cole and high-ranking judges. This was not just your grandmother. There are politicians tied to this. If this breaks publicly, it will ruin everyone involved." Zoey breathed slowly, steadying her voice. "Then we do not stop. We bring everything out." Rachel hesitated. "If we do this, your entire family's name will fall. Julian's career, the company, the estate, everything." Zoey closed her eyes. The mansion hallway felt heavy, but her decision was clear. If this is the price of the truth, then let it fall. The wind outside rattled the windows. The empire Eleanor built had begun to crack. And Zoey was no longer just a girl trying to understand her past. She was the one who would decide the future. The tension had been building like a storm pressing against the windows of the Hale estate. Eleanor called for an emergency board meeting. No explanation. No warning. Just a demand that every influential member of the family and the Hale financial network be present. The grand hall, usually reserved for celebrations and charity galas, was rearranged into a boardroom. Polished marble floors. Heavy velvet curtains. The Hale crest shining proudly on the wall. It was a stage prepared for power, and Eleanor stood at the center like a queen defending her throne. Julian walked in with a quiet confusion on his face. He did not know the reason for this meeting. He only knew that Eleanor's tone the night before had been sharp, almost frightened. Zoey walked beside him, calm, steady, but there was something new in her gaze. Resolve. She knew what was coming. Eleanor looked at Zoey with a cold smile that held no warmth. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, projecting her voice like she was addressing a courtroom, "there is a matter of betrayal that threatens the stability of this family. And it begins with my son's wife." A few whispers spread through the room. Zoey did not flinch. Eleanor continued, "Zoey Hale has been digging into records that were sealed for the protection of our legacy. She has contacted journalists. She has attempted to stir distrust in our leadership. She has acted with the intent to damage our name." She paused for effect. Julian's eyes widened. He looked toward Zoey. "Is this true?" Zoey took a slow breath. "Yes, I searched. Because there were truths hidden from you. Truths that you deserve to know." Eleanor slammed her hand on the table. "You see? She admits it. She is manipulating you. She is after our name, our power, just like her mother. Just like every outsider who sees the Hale fortune and wants to claim a piece of it." The board murmured again, some nodding, some looking uneasy. Zoey did not raise her voice. "Julian, your mother was not taken away. She was forced away, and the people who did it are in this room." A silence heavy enough to crush breath spread across the space. Before Eleanor could speak again, the doors swung open. Rachel Monroe stepped in, and behind her, two individuals wearing federal jackets. The FBI. The room froze. Eleanor's confident mask cracked. Rachel placed a folder thick with documents and photos onto the table. "We have been compiling evidence for weeks. Evidence of fraud, falsified legal orders, bribed judges, manipulated medical reports, and transfer of custody under criminal coercion. The signature used to declare Maya Lawson unfit to parent? It belongs to Harrington Cole Firm under Eleanor's directive." Julian's hands shook. His voice came out broken. "Mother, is this true?" Eleanor tried to recover. "Julian, listen to me. Everything I did was to protect you. She was unstable. She would have ruined you. She would have kept you small." Zoey stepped closer to him. "Your mother loved you. She did not leave you. She was taken." The FBI agent stepped forward. "Eleanor Hale, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and unlawful removal of a legal guardian. You have the right to remain silent." Eleanor's face twisted, not with guilt, but with fury. "You think you have won? This family does not fall. You have no idea what I built." Rachel answered quietly, "That is exactly what we are dismantling." As officers guided Eleanor away, Julian collapsed into a chair, breathing like someone who had forgotten how. His voice was barely a whisper. "All this time. I thought she abandoned me." Zoey rested her hand on top of his. "She never stopped loving you. And now you can finally know her, truly know her." Tears slid down Julian's face, silent and uncontrollable. Rachel added softly, "Maya is safe. And she has been waiting." Julian looked at Zoey, eyes full of something new. Not confusion, not distance, recognition, and gratitude that went deeper than words. In that moment, Zoey was not just his wife. She was the one who returned his mother to him, the one who broke open the walls of his life, the one who helped him see what love was actually supposed to feel like. This was the moment everything changed. Maya's recovery was gradual but steady. For the first time in years, she felt safe, surrounded by people who truly cared. The illness that had shadowed her life seemed to lose its grip as the best medical treatment became available, and her cheeks regained a healthy glow. Quiet mornings were filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the soft hum of the city outside, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had consumed her before. Julian sat across from her one afternoon, his hands trembling slightly as he reached out. His voice, soft and raw, carried years of unspoken regret. "Maya, I am so sorry for everything you endured because of my family. I should have never let this happen." There were no grand speeches or dramatic gestures, only a simple, heartfelt acknowledgement that meant more than words could express. Tears welled in Maya's eyes, and she took his hand. Forgiveness was not immediate, but the space for healing had finally opened. Zoey, at just 11, had grown into a young girl whose courage and intelligence inspired everyone around her. Her story, once unknown, now spread through communities, newspapers, and online platforms. People saw her not just as a child, but as a symbol of unwavering determination and justice, Offers for scholarships, speaking engagements, and mentorship arrived from across the country, recognizing that her fight had saved not only her own family, but many others who had suffered in silence. The Hale family began rebuilding slowly, gently, without forcing reconciliation. Quiet dinners became a ritual. Conversations were filled with honest emotions, and laughter returned to the halls that had once felt cold and oppressive. Julian and Maya learned to navigate their renewed bond with patience, while Zoey's presence reminded them daily of resilience, courage, and the importance of standing for what was right. As Zoey arranged letters of support and notes of encouragement from families affected by the corruption they had exposed, she paused and looked at her parents. Her small smile carried both pride and relief. Justice had been served, and now, for the first time, they could live without fear. The past could no longer control them. Even as the world continued outside the mansion's walls, within, there was a sense of calm triumph. Healing had begun, and the family, once fractured by lies and power, was finally finding its true rhythm. The Hale mansion, once heavy with silence and tension, now felt alive with warmth. Maya's laughter echoed softly through the halls, a gentle reminder of resilience and second chances. Julian watched Zoey with a mixture of pride and awe, realizing that the small girl he had underestimated had become the heart of their family.
He no longer treated her merely as his daughter, but as his equal, her intelligence and courage earning every ounce of respect.
Zoey, holding the photo of her mother in her hands, carefully placed it on the mantel. The image captured Maya's gentle smile, a quiet strength that had survived years of injustice. It was a deliberate act, a symbol of what they had fought for and what they had reclaimed. The family gathered nearby, sharing a moment of quiet understanding, unspoken but profoundly felt. In this renewed home, power had no place without compassion, and wealth meant little compared to trust and love. Zoey's small voice, once overlooked on the streets, had spoken a truth so loud it could not be ignored. Justice, courage, and resilience had transformed their lives completely. If this story touched your heart, you can support by liking and subscribing. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Power means nothing without compassion. And sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truth.